Hi, Eric.
Hello.
Back again.
Yeah.
What you bringing in the shop today?
We got an actually pretty darn rare car. This is a 79 Chrysler 300 with T-tops. What was he just telling us? Is one of only like 200 or something?
200 of these. That's all they made. And only 80 with a sunroof.
Yeah, the sunroof is actually rare, but I'm sure the T-tops are more desirable.
Much more desirable. Let's take a look at what we got here. This Chrysler 300 was kind of the last gasp of the performance era as they moved further and further down the rabbit hole of malaise, emissions, and starvation of performance.
Yeah, well, they tried. They didn't have much choice, but they did try. In Chrysler's defense, I think Chrysler had fairly, they were always the engineering company, so I think their engines were just a little bit more efficient, and so they were able to get, better power out of engines that were the same size or smaller than a lot of the competition. Now, don't get me wrong, nobody made anything in 77, 78, 79, 80 that was a race car, but 318s could hold their own next to 350s and stuff like that, so.
But this car is packing the 360.
Yeah, let's have a look at it.
Heavy duty, the same V8 that we have in our Dodge St. Regis police pursuit car. This V8 was good for about 195 to 200 horsepower at the wheels.
Well, it's had the smog pump removed, so maybe you can give it that 200.
Maybe, but there it is. A 360 4-barrel V8. So what's on the docket for this car?
Fix a trans leak, which we're pretty sure is a selector shaft seal. Check out the air conditioning and see if it's going to be a simple fix or a difficult fix. And then he strongly suspects that's got an intake leak as well. So I'll probably hook it up to my smoke machine up there and see if any smoke leaks out anywhere.
And this is a return customer for us. This is the same gentleman that has a collection of Chrysler 300 convertibles from the 60s.
And I'm putting the lean burn back on, whether he likes it or not.
He did give it to us.
Actually, he did. So, yeah, the original lean burn for this car is right here. There's the computer and the carburetor. Let's surprise him and put it back on.
Might give him a heart attack.
It probably would.
Like a lot of the Mopar customer base, they are adamantly opposed to having lean burn on their performance cars, but
yeah.
You find it to be overall a pretty darn good system if you know how it works.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why it's got a bad reputation. There's, a couple things that can go wrong with it, but by far the worst thing is it's just misunderstood. There's a switch on the side of the carburetor that you have to ground when you, this right here. You've got to take a jumper wire and jump that to ground to adjust the ignition timing when you adjust it on lean burn. And you can't skip that, but everybody does. And so then they wonder why they've got an idle surge when they're done.
Packing almost 200 horsepower, this car was very close in performance to our Dodge St. Regis state police car that's right behind you there. Mm-hmm. Packing the same 360 4-barrel V8, probably the same 727 transmission, the same 9 1/4 rear end, about the same weight distribution.
Yeah, we don't know about the 9 1/4. I'll get this car up in the air and take a peek. I'll bet you it does, which is crazy to me that the same axle you got in a 444 barrel in 1970 is now behind a Malaise era 360. That's way overkill, but it's cool.
It's like trying to swat a fly with a Buick.
Yeah.
There's no reason to overbuild it that much, but Chrysler did it.
Mm-hmm.
They had the parts available and they put the best components, just like in the police cars, they put them in this car as well, this 1979 Chrysler 300 T-top. Well, Eric, let you get to work and see what we can find on this old runner.
Okay.
The last gasp of the Malaise performance. Wow, Eric, this 300 has a pretty big diff. How does it compare to our Dodge St. Regis State Patrol car?
It looks the same to me.
Let's take a look at this monster of a rear end.
Yeah, that's a 9 1/4. That's pretty cool. And so just like he said, you know, these 300s are more or less a police package, 2-door B-body. So yeah, it's got what would be the police rear end in it. You know, same rear end you would have got in a Roadrunner in 1970 if you got the 444 barrel. You know, it's not the ultimate, you know, Dana 60 like you'd get with a Hemi car, but still, I mean, that's basically a truck axle.
It is definitely overbuilt for only having to bear the power and torque of a 360 small block Smogger 4-barrel.
Yeah.
So you've got the heavy-duty police engine, heavy-duty 727 transmission, heavy-duty 9 1/4 axle. You probably got cop brakes, cop shocks.
I bet it does.
Just about everything heavy-duty that came on the police car behind you
yeah,
is...
rear anti-sway bar, if you didn't say that already.
Yep, it's got that too. And a big one at that. So first impressions.
I don't think it's got... Doesn't your R-body have some more beefiness to torque boxes?
Torque boxes, I'm not sure. We know it has additional structural welds, but let's see how it compares.
I thought it did. Yeah. So this is our police package 1980 Dodge St. Regis, and this is for sure a real police package car. And this piece of metal here is special, I'm pretty sure, to the police package R bodies. And you know, I thought it was on the B bodies too, but we got one over there that doesn't have it. So, you know, from around here, up to this edge here, and around back, I'm pretty sure that's police only.
That's a big, strong torque box.
Yeah, a little bit of extra strength in the chassis there.
Which typically, you said you only found in the Hemi cars.
I believe so. I mean, I must admit I've never been underneath a Hemi B body, because that's really what these R bodies are. They're basically just a B body. Slightly modified. Yeah, the wheelbase is a little bit longer on the R body, but you know, Chrysler, why would they? I can't see them making a special torque box just for the R body police package. You know, how many? They only sold a few thousand of those cars.
But we did expect to find one on this B body Chrysler 300, and what did we find?
Well, yeah, because this car's got basically, this is the 79 Chrysler 300, which basically has all the B-body police car parts on it, but it doesn't have the torque boxes. So I think that's kind of interesting. I'll bet you what this has is like all the bolt-on police package stuff.
So normally you would expect that this would have been reinforced with the same material. Mm-hmm. And yet,
if it was, like the old police cars were K-code, but you could buy the A38 bolt-on police package parts.
That didn't have all the extra welding.
Right, so that's almost like that's what this is.
Right.
It's got the bolt-on stuff, but it doesn't have the extra welding and the extra braces that would have to be welded in.
Not that the 300 was designed to be a police vehicle.
No.
But interestingly, they seem to put most of the police issue components on this car to improve performance and handling and durability.
Honestly, I mean, this car doesn't need a 9 1/4 axle in it, but there it is.
It's got it. Well, that's very interesting. I don't think anyone has ever compared unibody components on the R-body police car to the B-body Chrysler 300 and found a difference like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's interesting. Like I said, we know that the R bodies are basically a reboot of the B bodies.
Right.
You get underneath an R body and you look up at it and you swear you're looking at a B. You know, I'm sure almost everything on the floor pans and all that is darn near the same. It's interesting that this here is a real police package B body, and it doesn't have those torque boxes. So I don't know if maybe that's something you only got on these if you got the 440 or what, or I don't know. Maybe police package B bodies never got the torque boxes, but police package R bodies did. I can't imagine why, and then this car, this is a police package, and it doesn't have the 9 1/4 in it. This is, I believe, the 8 3/4. Is that what that is?
It is.
So it's just interesting.
Now this is a 1974 model, and the 9 1/4 would not become standard on these cars for a few more years. But at the time, the B-bodies, this is about as good as they could do. The 8 3/4 was standard on most B-body performance cars.
And it's so strange that this, you know, this is a real police package B-body with a 360 in it. And over there we've got a police package R-body with a 360 in it. And that one's got the torque boxes and the heavier duty rear axle. This one's got the lighter duty axle and no torque boxes. And the 360 in this should be stronger than that one. It's just crazy. It's just, you know, we're nerding out over here if you can't tell.
We are, but we're having fun because look at what we've got. We've got a 74 Chrysler B-body police pack. We've got a 1979 Chrysler 300 non-police pack, but with all the A38 components. And then we have a 1980 modified B-body into an R-body platform with the A38 police pack, which has all of the additional upgrades to the Unibody. Why Chrysler made the decisions they did at the time, who can say?
Yeah.
It was a crazy period. I think the car companies were a little bit schizophrenic during the Malaise era.
A little bit.
And if we're nerding out, they did as well.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure what they were thinking.
Well, I'll let you get back to this Chrysler 300 T-top. We'll see what else you end up finding here, Eric, as we unite both performance luxury cars and police cars right here at Chase Classic Motors. Well, Eric, how's the 300 coming?
Okay, now, I learned something. So I was trying to replace the selector shaft seal on the 727 transmission without pulling the valve body out. So a while back, I don't remember how long, about a year ago, I bought this tool online for exactly that job. And you can kind of, if you've ever used a seal puller before, you can kind of see how it works. You know, you put it on there, tap it down, spin it, and these teeth are supposed to dig into the seal. And then after they're dug in, you tighten the bolt on the top, and it pushes off the selector shaft and pulls the seal out. Try as I may, this tool wouldn't work. It just wouldn't bite. I kind of thought this might happen, so just as a plan B, I brought this tool with me. This is a actual Chrysler Miller tool, C13783. This is intended for replacing the power steering pump shaft seals on the old Chrysler power steering pumps. So before they started using the pumps, I think were made by Saginaw, and they had the Chrysler pumps. I actually bought this to do my 67 New Yorker power steering pump seal. So it was a plan B. I used this because I knew it was a similar size on that 727 selector shaft seal, and I pulled it right out.
Well, I've been looking at a couple of videos of people using those aftermarket seal pullers.
The aftermarket ones on a Chrysler? Mm-hmm. Do they work?
No consensus yet, but that was the scope of the video. I was like, why is it having so much difficulty pulling that out? Well, the right tool for the right job, evidently.
I guess the Chrysler just wanted a Chrysler tool.
Well, that's great. You can even see that seal puller is definitely stamped with the power steering.
Yep, I don't know if you can see it in this light. Remover PS pump shaft seal. You know, Miller Tools C3783.
So that tool, is it what, 50 years old?
Yeah, about that. I mean, I don't remember. I think that power steering pump in my New Yorker, I don't remember how far back that goes. I think to the 50s. So yeah, I don't know. When I got it, it looked like it had never been used, and this is only the second time I've used it. So.
And is that same seal puller compatible on some of the other Mopars we have here?
I don't know if it's compatible for the power steering pump shaft. Every other Mopar we've got here has the newer Saginaw pump. I'm not sure about the Challenger. I don't remember if that, I don't think that ever, it's got power steering on it. The pump isn't here. Maybe it's in the trunk. No, this car does not have power steering. So no, nothing we got here is gonna have this pump. I'd have to bring in my 67 New Yorker.
But how amazing that it turned out to be compatible with the selector shaft seal to the transmission.
I thought, I mean, that other tool there, that's not a Chrysler tool. That's an aftermarket one that I don't remember who made, but it was specifically for this. And just because I've been here before where sometimes the tool doesn't work and you have to have a plan B, I brought this with me from home today, and I'm glad I did.
Boy, me too. Well, I'll let you get back to work. You're making great progress on this Chrysler 300. Let's see what else we can find.
All right.
How's it going, Eric?
Okay. So we got this car here, belongs to a good customer of ours, 79 Chrysler 300 with a 360 in it. He's been frustrating himself trying to get rid of just a lack of response. Anytime you stab at the throttle at all, it just doesn't respond to it. A little bit like a bad accelerator pump in a carburetor, but not really. And this is the second carburetor he's put on here, so and it didn't change anything. So I checked compression on it last week. Compression was maybe a little low, but actually not out of spec. Nothing really wrong with it. And then I thought, well, what else could it be? I checked for a vacuum leak with the smoke machine. Nothing was leaking. So then I thought maybe the timing was off, not the ignition timing. I tried adjusting that and I couldn't make the car happy at all. I'm talking valve timing. If you try to go on YouTube and find a conclusive way to check if your timing chain has slipped a tooth or if it's sloppy or anything, they really don't tell you anything. At least I couldn't find any videos. They just think things like, well, if you're seeing this, you might have a timing issue. Gee, that's real helpful. So I found a procedure in the factory service manual that actually tells you conclusively what to look for. So it says to turn the engine over, and I removed a bunch of stuff so that you can see this for clarity. I took the valve covers off. By the way, something of interest here, these are the heavy-duty reusable valve covers on this 360. But anyway, I took the valve covers off. I took the fan off because trying to turn the engine over by hand with the fan there was a nightmare. But it says to turn the engine over until the exhaust. Well, let me just read it. Why should I think about it? Because I still have it open over here. So valve timing, turn the crankshaft until number 6 exhaust valve is closing and number 6 intake valve is opening. So I turned it over till it just got there. Insert a 1/4 inch spacer between the rocker arm pad and the stem tip on number 1 cylinder intake valve. Allow spring load to bleed tap it down, giving it effect of a solid tappet. I did that too. Install dial indicator so plunger contacts valve spring retainer as nearly perpendicular as possible. That's on the intake valve for cylinder number 1. Zero the indicator. Then rotate the crankshaft clockwise until the valve has lifted 10 thousandths of an inch for 318 or 34 thousandths of an inch for 360. After that point, the timing on the crankshaft pulley should now read from 10 degrees before top dead center to 2 degrees after. Remove spacer. Now we didn't show you me showing all that, setting all that up because that was a pain in the butt. So instead I just got it here. So here I am just about to turn the engine over and try to find that 34 thousandths of an inch movement there. So I don't know if you want to show this, but I've got the dial indicator set up there. I got it set to 0. I got it set up. I do have a spacer in there. I just stuck a 1/4 inch wide nut. I know that the tolerances on that nut are not super high, but I don't think it matters that much. They just want something to bleed the lifter down. It didn't say in there anything like a, 0.250 spacer. So I'm assuming since they didn't specify tolerances that close, they literally just said 1/4 inch. Something, within a 1/16 of an inch, I'm assuming is good. So I've measured the width of that nut. It was a 1/4 inch plus or minus a 1/16. I think it was maybe just a 1/16 smaller than that, and I figured that was good. If they wanted something more specific, they should have said, in my book, they should have said 0.250. So So here we go. Now I'm going to turn it over until we get 34 thousandths of an inch on that dial, and we'll see where we're at. Let's see, that's 10, 20, 30. Of course, it's a little sticky, so trying to get that last 4 is kind of tricky. I almost overshot it, but there it is. It's close. What did it say our spec was? 2 degrees before to 10 degrees after? Now read from 10 degrees before to 2 degrees after. Well, the bad news is we're there. We're at about 5 degrees before. So if I've done this right, then it's actually good. So now I don't know where to look. At least we gave you a procedure, which is what nobody on YouTube can do. And of course, that only applies to Chrysler small blocks. So if you're working on a Chrysler big block or a Chevy small block or anything else, this may not work. The specs almost certainly won't work.
But according to that test, the valve train is in proper time with the crank. Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting technical procedure there for testing the timing on this Chrysler 360. But now, looks like you're going to be continuing the investigation into finding out why this engine has a bit of a power lag.
Yeah, it doesn't have a misfire. It runs smooth. It just doesn't respond when you tip into it. If you tip into it slow, it's okay. But if you stab it at all, it just doesn't respond. So
maybe it's telling you it wants its lean burn back on.
yeah. Well, it actually had the lean burn on it when the problem developed, so he removed it, put on electronic ignition, and I think that's a Holley carb, and it didn't change anything. It's exactly the same. That's another one of my pet peeves, by the way. People blame lean burn for everything. Here we are with a car that, someone took the lean burn off and didn't fix it.
Well, I'll be interested to see what you find out next.
Yeah, I'll have to come up with, I don't know, I'm not sure where I'm gonna go next. I'm gonna have to think about it.
But it's a Chrysler, it's a small block V8, you're gonna find it.
Yeah, I hope so.
And when you do, we'll show the audience what happens right after this. And we are back with our top gone Maverick, a 1979 Chrysler 300 T-top. Let's see what Eric's been up to. Hi, Eric.
Hello.
So what's the story?
Oh, this car has been a pain in the butt for a while. So the story is, this car had lean burn on it from the factory, and the customer said it was not performing right. You'd drive it and tip into the throttle, and it would bog, almost like a bad accelerator pump, and then it would kind of catch up and go with the lean burn. So he took the lean burn off, and he said that he had a friend help him who's done it before. They put a electronic ignition distributor on it, with the Chrysler electronic ignition box, and they put a Holley carburetor on it, and aftermarket carburetor, and the problem was still there. So he brought it to us to try to figure out what was wrong, and I didn't have any reason not to believe him. It was a brand new carburetor, so I literally checked everything else I could find. I thought it was a vacuum leak for a long time. Checked it with the smoke machine, couldn't find any smoke. Did a couple other checks to try to find vacuum leaks. You know, I took a little gas torch with the engine running and just opened the valve and went around where the intake gasket is and the base of the carburetor and everything, looking for try to see if the idle speed changes. That didn't work. I even tried water and that didn't work. You know, just spray a little bit of water on around places while it's idling. Didn't change anything. Checked the timing chain to see if there's any slack in it. There wasn't any. I couldn't imagine that the timing chain slipped a tooth if there was no slack in it, but I checked that also because there's a procedure for that in the service manual, and it was perfect. So round and round and round, checked everything I could think of, and finally, almost desperation, I would say, I was like, well, I gotta try something. So we had this Edelbrock carburetor that's just kind of been in stock here for a while. I don't know where it came from, how long we've had it, if it was working properly when it came off the car, whatever. I rebuilt it, I put it on this car, I took it for a test drive, and the bog is gone.
How about that?
Yup. So
a 40-year-old used carburetor that we had in stock, you hand rebuilt it, and it's performing and doing everything better than the brand new aftermarket one was that was on here.
Well, I don't know if it's 40 years old. I kind of doubt that. It's probably one that someone either gave to me at some point, or maybe I took it off of one of my Chrysler products. You know what a nut I am. I've got a couple cars that were born with lean burn that people deleted, and I put the lean burn back on. So I think I got another Edelbrock at home still, possibly. I'll have to check. That probably has the same story. It's probably came off of a lean burn car that I put the lean burn back on.
Because this car would have normally had the original thermoquad.
Yep.
Along with lean burn rather than the electronic ignition that we see here on the firewall.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the same setup as I recall that we have on our Dodge St. Regis black and white squad car.
Yep.
Up in the air. And it's a winning combination. Ever since you transitioned that car over to Edelbrock with electronic ignition, I found the drivability to be very good.
Yeah, well, the carb you had on there, I think we had two problems with it. Number one, it was too big. It was a big block carb. Number two, I think the phenolic body was warped or cracked or something, so it had a vacuum leak that you just couldn't get rid of. So yeah, the Edelbrock helped that one a lot.
But our customer was a little dismayed. He had spent like $500 on a brand new carb to correct the drivability issues on this car, and he said it made absolutely no difference.
Yeah, and that's the weirdest thing. That's part of the reason why I chased my tail on this car for so long, you know? Even though that's kind of a classic carburetor problem, he said it did it with the old carburetor and with the new. So I was like, well, then it's gotta be something else. And I exhausted everything I could think of. I checked compression on all 8 cylinders, and they were all great.
The timing chain, and yeah, that was, what was it, just absolutely dead on within spec accurate.
It was well within spec. So
practically like new, despite being over almost 45 years old now. And those good old Mopar double roller timing chains they put on these E58 engines, boy, those things just last a lifetime, it seems.
Yeah, I don't know, one of those things. That's why I try to never, get new parts out of a box if I can rebuild the old one if possible. Now I know he probably kind of wanted to delete the lean burn, so he wasn't gonna be able to just rebuild the original carburetor and throw it on anyway, I don't think. Maybe he could have rejetted it or something and make it richer and then just put the electronic ignition on, I'm not sure.
Didn't he give us the carb to this car?
Actually, yes, he did. So we actually have the lean burn for this car. We're probably gonna rebuild it and put it on one of our body police cars.
That'll be great. I can't wait to see you do that.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll make it this
one. I know. You all think well, who am I kidding? I am crazy. In my defense, part of the reason why I like lean burn so much is I'm pretty sure these new electronic ignitions are made in China. I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure they are. And I've been burned by too many Chinese parts. If you ask me, what do I trust more, lean burn or a Chinese ignition module, I'll go with lean burn every time. I hate Chinese parts.
Seems to be a more and more common occurrence now with customers that we've seen that have been burned, just like you have, with aftermarket parts made overseas that just say what you will about American quality in the 70s. Some way, somehow, just because of mass production and the tooling was newer, the quality just seemed to be better.
Well, better than brand new China, that's for sure.
Even if the electronics technology is far superior today, when we're talking about these old mechanical components, the systems and how they go together, the boys back in Detroit knew what they were doing 40, 50 years ago. It was a golden time that may never come around again.
No, doesn't look like it, not as far as I can see.
But that's one of the beauties about being able to keep cars of this generation alive. And that's why I'm so happy that you've made this fantastic breakthrough with this car.
Oh man, yeah, you have no idea how much better I feel. This was really giving me some sleepless nights.
Well, I'll let you get back to work. I know you want to finish wiring this up together. I know you said the electric choke for it is on back order, but hopefully we'll have this car up and running again tomorrow so we can see you take it for a test drive.
Yeah.
Hey there, Eric.
Hello.
So I see you're got the vacuum pump hooked up.
Yeah, this customer wants us to check one more thing before we give the car back to him. He wants to see if his air conditioning can be saved cheaply. It doesn't work at all right now. Compressor doesn't engage when you turn it on, which, you know, with a car this old, most likely it's out of refrigerant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by checking that. And when I find that it's out, because I'm sure it will be, I'm going to vacuum it, see if it will take a vacuum, see if it holds vacuum, and if it does, we'll go from there. You know, most car air conditionings, they have, they're going to have either they're going to have a high side and a low side service port. I did that backwards actually. This is actually the high side. This is the low side. And you can tell if you look at the way the hoses go into the compressor and come out of the compressor. The evaporator is on the low side, that's under the dash, so refrigerant's going to come out of there, go into the compressor, coming in on the low side, and they'll come out on the high side. So, and then from there it goes onto the condenser. Some cars of this vintage will have 3 service ports. If they have 3, usually you'll have one before the receiver dryer and one after the receiver dryer. And on this car, where is the receiver dryer? Oh, there it is. And the reason they had 3, if I remember correctly, is they were afraid, you know, if the receiver dryer got plugged or if the desiccant bag in it broke and the desiccant started working its way down the line, they gave you 3 service ports that you could diagnose the restriction. But this car doesn't have it, and most cars built, you know, since about 1980 or so don't. But anyway, my manifold gauges are for 134A system, which is fine. I mean, you know, the pressures between R12 and R134A are virtually identical. This car would have left the factory with R12, but because I'm trying to diagnose it with R134A gauges, I have to buy the adapters. So I'll take this little cap off here and put the adapter on, and we'll see if there's any pressure in it. Hex-shaped caps, that's those are the caps this car left the factory with. All right, and when I hook this up, right now my low side gauge says 0. Hook it up. Oh, no wonder it was so hard. The valve is already down. That wasn't good. And it still says 0. So just like I said, there's nothing in it. I'm gonna turn the vacuum pump on. Open the low side service valve. There, you saw it drop. So it's starting to vacuum. And of course, it's good that it's already in a vacuum. That's a good sign. That means that there's not a gaping hole in the system. Doesn't mean there's no holes, no. I'll let it sit here for a while and take a vacuum, and then, I don't know, I'll probably let it sit here 15 or 20 minutes while I do something else. I could let it go all day. You can't over vacuum it. You're not gonna hurt it. When I'm done doing whatever else I do, I'll close the service valve, turn off the vacuum pump, and I'll just let the car sit here for a while and see if it holds vacuum. If it does, we'll move on to the next step. Good news is, so far it's holding a vacuum. I've only had the pump off for 10 or 15 minutes, so this is definitely not a conclusive test, but it's a good sign. So we're down, you know, gauge is indicating about 28 and a half inches of vacuum. That's pretty good. If it stays there, maybe the customer will want us to throw some refrigerant in this and and we'll see what happens.
Fire it up, see if we get that sweet cold air again.
Yeah.
All right, I'll let you move this one next.
Okay. This one's getting an oil change, and I still have to put the choke on the carburetor. Those of you watching, if you saw the last thing I did with this when I was hooking the carburetor up, the eagle-eyed ones among you will notice it does have a choke on it, but when I rebuilt it, I broke part of the choke shaft. So I had to order a whole choke kit to get just the shaft. And so before I give the car back to the customer, I gotta put that on.
And that'll be good as new.
Yeah, then I'll have a good working carb.
Better than new.
Mm-hmm.
It'll have Eric's seal of approval to go with it.
For whatever that's worth. Now the tricky part is I don't want to take the manifold gauges off because, you know, it's showing me the vacuum, and I can't take it off and put it back on. It takes, you know, that's gonna ruin it. I could drive it as long as I could see.
I'll put this down and we'll get this Chrysler 300 to move.
Okay.
Well, Eric, that 300 certainly seems to like that Edelbrock.
Yeah, it does like it. I still gotta put the choke on it and do an oil change. And if the vacuum holds, we'll put some refrigerant in it and see what happens with the air conditioning.
But it sounds great.
Yeah, it does. It's finally happy. When this car came in, someone had cranked the torsion bars way down in the front and it was sitting in the weeds, which I know some people like that look, but the owner of the car didn't. He bought it that way. I don't like that look. To me, it looks like the car's been messed with by someone that probably didn't know what they were doing, honestly, because if you crank the torsion bars down, you change the ride height, you change all of the alignment angles too. Camber, caster, toe, and most people don't know that. They just crank it down and then wonder why it wanders all over the road and why it's eating up tires. So you can't do that.
And that's why this car needed a full front end alignment.
Yeah, I mean, I only adjusted the toe. That's all we had the tools to do here right now. But I think that's all it needed. You know, the tires aren't wearing. It steers a lot better. The steering wheel is straight now, and it wasn't before. I think he's going to be happy.
Well, the car certainly seems to be happy. Look at it. Nice and level. Purring like a kitten. This 300's in a lot better shape than when it rolled in here.
Yeah, it is.
Now with a fresh oil change, he'll be ready to hit the streets once again.
And maybe working air conditioning.
That'll be next. Let's see what happens.
Next, we just have to put the lean burn back on.
Like Eric is in study mode. What you reading there, Eric?
Well, we've got our customer's Chrysler 300 out there that we're gonna try to fix the air conditioning in. We vacuum tested it. It went into a deep vacuum, held vacuum overnight. So it looks like it doesn't have any significant leaks in it. So the next thing to do is fill it with oil and refrigerant and see what happens, you know. And now, of course, I'll put a little dye in it so that if it leaks out, we can see where it's leaking. But I was reading this Chrysler service manual for checking the oil in that compressor, and the funny thing is that compressor is like almost like a little V-twin engine, and it's actually got an oil sump. And there are directions in the service manual, the actual Chrysler service manual, on how to make a dipstick. So you take a bolt out of the side of this compressor, put the dipstick in there, and check the oil level. Now, I'm going to try as best I can to change the oil in that compressor because it's 40 years old and it's, mineral oil, which they would have used for the R12, and we're going to be converting it to 134A, so I have to put in ester oil. But I'm laughing at some of the service procedure here for checking the oil in the compressor. It says, number 1, slowly discharge refrigerant system. Slowly discharge. They're not talking, you know, hook your AC recovery machine up and pull the refrigerant out into a proper, you know, filtering and recycling thing. They mean open it up and shoot it out in the air.
Sounds like the technician's supposed to be reading between the lines there, eh?
I mean, it doesn't specifically says vent refrigerant.
To atmosphere, but...
But that's the intent here, yeah. Slowly discharge refrigerant system.
It was a different time 45 years ago, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Really, it made me chuckle.
What else does it say?
Near completion of discharge, oil dipstick, made up as shown in figure 3, should be flushed with Freon. So in other words, take the dipstick, take some Freon, and just go and clean it off.
I take
It's
it you're not going to be
crazy.
doing it that way.
No, we're not going to do it that way, but I mean, of course, you know, Freon, R12 is so valuable now, we're not going to vent it ever anyway. You know, it's just, you know, it's funny because it was such a different world.
Well, we'll see how much the world has changed when we bring that car back in and you show us more about the procedures, about how to service the air conditioning system.
Yep, well, I'm gonna have to make, well, I don't know. I don't necessarily have to make a dipstick. I just have to find something short enough and small enough to get in there and then make sure it's up to the level they specify in here. So we'll do that, and then we'll have to fill the sump with some fresh ester oil, vacuum it again, and then charge it up with 134A.
Sounds like a plan.
So what I'm doing now is basically an oil change on our customer's air conditioning compressor. One of the cool things about these old Chrysler compressors, they are a lot like a little V-twin engine almost, and they actually do have an oil sump. So in the passenger side of the compressor here, I took out this little bolt, which actually gives me access to the sump, if you can see it there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just took a piece of brake line and stuck it in my, my vacuum pump here. Reached down to the bottom of the sump, and I'm sucking as much oil out of there as I can with my vacuum pump. This is not really something you normally do. Compressor oil doesn't lose viscosity, but what it does do is it does absorb moisture. It's hydroscopic, just like brake fluid. So it does go bad after a while, and you know, how often should you change the compressor oil in your car's air conditioning system? There really isn't any procedure or specification for that. You're not going to see anywhere in the service manual, change compressor oil every 30,000 miles or something like that. It just doesn't exist. But this car is well over 40 years old now. This has probably never been done again. When it came in, there's no refrigerant in it. I don't know what's up with this system, if it's been open for a while or whatever. So I'm gonna go ahead and change this oil. I'm gonna suck out what's in here, pour some fresh stuff right into the sump there, and then follow the procedure for checking it. I'm not gonna put too much effort into making a dipstick, but they tell you how far up the dipstick the oil level should be, so I'm just gonna find a piece of metal around here somewhere that's clean and use that as my dipstick, and as long as the oil level is up to where it should be when I put the fresh stuff in, I'm calling it good. And we're gonna put dye and refrigerant in here and get this system working again. I still gotta put the choke parts on this car, and then this car is all set. All right, so I found a throttle return spring here that is fresh, not full of crud and stuff, never been used. And according to the service information, the oil level in this compressor should be up to 2 3/8 from the bottom. So I made a little mark on the throttle return spring here. And I already started putting a little bit of oil in. As you can imagine, it's not easy to get in there. But I put it in the hole that gives us access to the sump there. Pull it out. Like I say, I only put a little bit in so far, and it's only about 1/3 of the way up the dipstick. Now the oil I got out, this thing was definitely low. The oil I got out is right here. And that only measures up to an ounce. 1 ounce. So it was pretty low. It says in the service information, if you get it up to 2 3/8 on the dipstick, that's pretty equivalent to 8 ounces, which is as much as these little things carry anyway. So it's gonna take about this whole thing. But yeah, right now I'm just, very carefully squeezing the oil into the sump. And I'm gonna use almost this whole thing and keep checking it until it's up to where it's supposed to be. So I did put the entire 8 ounces of ester oil into the sump in this compressor, and I checked it with our dipstick here. And I'm sure it's very difficult. You probably can't see that on camera. I can barely see it. It's maybe a touch above where I put the mark. So we're good. The entire system, according to service information, takes between 10 and 12 ounces of oil. So there's a little bit of wiggle room in there anyway. And not all of that oil is going to stay in the compressor. As the refrigerant moves through the system, it's going to pick up the oil and move it everywhere. Most of the stuff that gets stuck is going to get stuck in the dryer, but it's going to coat the insides of the hoses, it's going to coat the insides of the condenser and the evaporator. So not all of it stays in the compressor anyway, but they say in the service information that you should have about 8 ounces in the compressor. So that's right where we're at. I'm going to put the plug back in, vacuum it again because it's open now. And then we're gonna put some dye in it. I've got a can of pressurized dye that I'm gonna shoot into it, and then I'm gonna fill it with refrigerant, R134A, and I got a little sticker to put on it to let anybody that ever services this system again know that this is not an R12 system anymore, it's now a 134A system. Oh, hang on, I gotta put a little Teflon or something on this. Actually, I'm not gonna use Teflon. I've got this white sealant. I refer to it as liquid Teflon. That's kind of what it is, high performance thread sealant, and it comes out white, so it makes me think of like a liquid Teflon tape. Why we keep it in the flammable cabinet is mostly just convenience, because I don't think this stuff is flammable. We pretty much just keep all of our fluids in there, all the RTVs and whatever else we got. Alrighty. Time to vacuum her down again, and after it's finished vacuuming, charge it up. The vacuuming process will take about half an hour. You really should vacuum a system, an automotive AC system for at least 20 minutes. And like I said in the other when I did this the other day, you can't overdo it. You could leave it on for days if you wanted to, and you're not going to do anything except maybe wear out your vacuum pump. But the longer you vacuum it, the better it is for the car. So I'm going to let this go probably at least half an hour while I go ahead and do something else.
Okay, Eric, we'll pick this up then.
All right.
How's the run, Eric?
Pretty darn good. His biggest issue was that hesitation on acceleration, and it always felt like a bad accelerator pump. You'd tip into it and it would fall on its face and then it would go. But that was 2 carburetors in a row. So I put this Edelbrock, this rebuilt Edelbrock on there, and no hesitation. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a really fast car, but it's fast enough to be fun, and considering it's a Malaise era car, it's pretty good. It's a strong E58 360. I think it's got a 3.2 axle ratio in it. It's got dual exhaust. I adjusted the transmission linkage. It goes from the side of the carburetor down to the trans, and it shifts a lot better too. You know, when it had the Holly on it, which is what it had on it when the guy dropped it off, it shifted a little harsh and a little high, which he didn't care about that, and it was okay. You know, it wasn't bad. But when I put this Edelbrock on, I noticed that it pushed back on that linkage a little bit, and I was like, well, I better adjust that then. So I did, and now it shifts perfectly. It's beautiful. It's right at the RPM and the speed that it should be. It's smooth. It's not harsh. So that was kind of a, you know, a side benefit. I wonder if he's gonna notice when he drives it how much nicer it shifts now. So I think this is a very happy car. It's unfortunate we weren't able to get the air conditioning working. So we vacuumed it, we filled it with oil, started to charge it, and we don't have an AC machine. We had to charge it the backyard way by putting it in the low side and running the air conditioning and letting it suck in. Compressor turned over a few times to start drawing it in, and then it locked up. So no joy there. But everything else is working great. Everything else he wanted us to do is all set. We had to adjust the ride height because someone cranked it way down. I had to crank it up over 2 inches and do a toe and a steer head adjustment. And the car looks great. It drives great. It doesn't pull. The steering wheel's straight. So other than the air conditioning, which is a bit of a bummer, but that's okay. We got time into the air conditioning, but really don't have any parts into it. So we're not gonna have to eat it that bad there. Everything else, everything he actually really wanted fixed is fixed, and the car drives really well. So I'm happy, the car is happy. I'm pretty sure the customer's gonna be happy.
And that makes me happy. This owner's been a very good customer to us, and you don't mind going that extra mile for his return business.
No, not at all. Especially when he brings us something cool like this. You know what a nerd I am. I like old Chryslers. I like this Malaise era junk. And I'm a sucker for a car with a red interior as well. So.
Well, that was a nice drive.
Mm-hmm. And he's selling this car too. This is the 3rd car this customer has brought us. His other 2 are big old C-body convertibles. They're beautiful, beautiful cars, and they're more his style than this. This is a very nice car, and I like this car a lot. It needs a paint job. The paint on it's kind of eh, but the interior is gorgeous. It's a beautiful combination of white with a red interior. It's T-tops, which is actually very rare. It was the only way you could get 79 Cordoba without a vinyl top, which I think is cool. This is probably about the fastest car you could get from Chrysler in '79. So for whatever that's worth. And it's a nice car.
And it's perfect for Chase Classic Motors. Even though it's a Malaise car, it's one of the fastest of the era. And it was one of those cars that would definitely be calling out breaker, breaker, Smokies up ahead. Keep that 55 double nickel.
You know, I believe a CB radio is optional from the factory in this car. This one's just an AM/FM with a, oh, it's been a long day. My brain's tired. 8-track player, thank you.
Well, it's been a good day.
Yeah, we got a lot done today.
And we'll be back. You'll be back with another project, maybe another Mopar.
Yep, we never can tell. We got a few projects going on in the shop right now.
So we'll see you at the next one.
All right, sounds good.
Good luck, Eric.